What was the most awkward thing you witnessed in the school classroom? Story 1. My high school economics class. A girl was called to the office with her things rather suddenly. About 2 minutes later, she comes bursting into the room and yells, "My dad just died!" The teacher immediately went to her to try and console her, as she was justifiably distressed. Everyone in the room was in complete shock. She then yelled at the teacher to get off of her and threw her arm back and started hysterically darting around the room. Eventually, her family member came to the room and got her. We could hear her sobbing down the hall. It was the craziest, most heart-wrenching thing I had seen in a class. The second most awkward thing involved the same girl about a year earlier. She nearly tried to fight our English literature teacher while he was dressed in a formal kilt and jacket. I don't remember why. She had to be escorted out by security. Poor girl, that's terrible news. No wonder she freaked out. Story 2. We had one of those strange, quiet kids at school that everyone would verbally abuse. One day, he showed up with 4 long scratch marks on the side of his face. These were pretty raw and were scabbing up. Kids were making fun of him. "Hey, Charlie, have a rough date last night? Hey, Charlie, you're supposed to jack off your dong, not your head." This went on for a couple of days. Then we find out the kid had taken a butcher knife to his piano teacher during a lesson and chopped the heck out of her. They found her body on the floor of the kitchen, nude, mutilated, and a bottle of wine and 2 wine glasses on the counter. He came to school for 2 days afterwards while she lay there on the floor rotting. She had been sexually abusing him for weeks, and he finally snapped. Poor kid. He got off on self-defense, and he and his family went underground after that. Name change and everything. Story 3. I don't know if this is awkward or more uncomfortably sad. When I was in middle school, pretty tight-knit, a kid had died on Saturday. I had a couple of classes with him but didn't know him that well. Well, on Monday, my second class of the day had a sub, and the kid who died happened to have been in that class. I guess no one clued the sub in because she called his name during attendance. It was deafeningly silent and felt like the air was slowly being sucked out of the room. After a second or two, she called his name again and several people burst into sobs and ran from the room. Then I heard someone whisper, "He died." Another teacher I had was absent that day too. I think he had some prior engagement as opposed to randomly taking a sick day. And the next day when he came back, the boy that died was also in this class. He was apologizing profusely for not being there for us and everything. At some point during his little speech, he started crying and slamming his fist down on his desk. It was so sad. He truly felt awful for not being there that day. That's a tough and tragic situation. Story 4. I was in the 9th grade and there was a girl in my classroom who broke both of her arms. So she had them in the cast that held her arms above her waist. Now, this girl wasn't the most popular, and she was best friends with another girl who was equally awkward as she was. I will never forget when the best friend raised her hand to get the attention of the teacher. The teacher called on the best friend, and she asked if she and her broken-armed friend could use the restroom together. And the teacher asks, "Why would you need to go together?" She replies just like this, "I have to unzip and take off her pants." Looking back, I understand now that she just wanted to help her friend use the restroom. But imagine being in 9th grade and you hear this. Everyone in the classroom was silent. Then one kid started laughing. Then everyone started laughing. And that is how the lesbian rumors started about the two. High school can be a bitch. What a good friend, though. Story 5. 11th grade. Shitty alternative school. One of the scummy kids was a notorious cigarette bum. They gave us smoke breaks at school to cut down on kids leaving campus. One day, he asked to bum a cigarette from someone and they said, "Eat a dead fly off the windowsill and I'll give you a cigarette." He thought about it for a minute and someone else offered to give him a cigarette for every fly he ate. This turned into eating all 24 of the available dead flies for 24 cigarettes. He ate them one at a time and collected a cigarette for each. The next day, he tried again, but there weren't any flies to eat. The following day, he brought his own flies in. That kid was fricked up. When I was in school, smoking was definitely not allowed anywhere. That kid is mentally disturbed too. Story 6. This really weird nerdy boy asked the prettiest girl to homecoming with this crazy big sign right in front of the entire class. But she already had a date. Don't let your dreams be dreams, I guess. Story 7. I was in the first day of a PE class with a classically intense coach. He bounced students out of the first week with ease. This one kid didn't follow his instructions, so he told him to get out. The kid remains silent and doesn't budge. The teacher comes up and starts yelling at him to leave. The kid walks up in his face and doesn't move. The entire class is watching, just wondering if this is how we all die. Eventually, he walked out, but it was uncomfortable as frick. Plot twist. Kid was deaf. Oh, I get it. So, kid was just deaf and the coach didn't know. Very awkward. Story 8. In 7th grade, there was this girl that was known for doing all kinds of weird crap. She cut a chunk of her hair off and left it on my friend's desk as a birthday present, meowed at people, and cried when anyone stepped on a bug. The most awkward incident happened when she dropped her pencil during a test. I guess she was too shy to ask the person next to her for it, so she tried to stretch for it and ended up flipping her desk over. She then continued to do her test in her desk sideways for another 10 minutes until the teacher told another student to flip her over. This sounds like it could be in Sideways Stories from Wayside School. Story 9. It wasn't me, but the stories were everywhere. In public grade school, our superintendent made a surprise visit and decided to sit in on a random teacher's class. She sat in the back to watch, and these two boys in front of her were whispering to each other. She leaned in and whispered that they should pay attention. They did, but 2 or 3 minutes later started again. This apparently happened several more iterations before the superintendent leaned forward and slammed their heads together and shouted, "Pay the frick attention to your teacher!" Fired before the end of the school day. Story 10. In 2nd grade of high school, a student flipped the F out and started throwing chairs and his desk at the teacher because he was refused a test reprisal upon failing it the first time. Crap got super scary. He was yelling like crazy, and the female teacher was trying to protect herself from the things thrown at her. Another teacher next door barged in, grabbed the enraged student, nailed him on the floor face down, and tied his feet and arms together with his belt and shoelace. I remember him being taken away, and we never saw him again. I think the teachers ate him. Ha ha! I hope somebody ate him. Roasted on a spit. Teacher barbecue. Story 11. Girl fell while sitting at a desk in math class. Person beside me starts laughing. The look on his face when it became obvious she was having a seizure was that of pure terror and regret. God dang, this same thing happened to me. She was my good friend, though we had a laugh about it afterward. Then next week, she sort of slumped over in her desk. I thought she was falling asleep, so I jokingly whispered to her, "Hey, don't have another seizure." She had another seizure. Story 12. My professor for a computer science class had his phone go off during a lecture one day. He's a pretty chill old man, so everyone starts giggling and some people are yelling at him to answer it. He looks at his phone and says, "Oh no, I'm not answering. My brother died today and I have to make funeral arrangements. I'll call back later." And then he moved on with his lecture. I've never seen a room so awkwardly quiet and sad. That dedication, though, definitely sad. What could you say? Story 13. Shortly after the Columbine shooting, I was called into the office and a guidance counselor tried very awkwardly to have a conversation with me about not mimicking the incident. I was a model student with no disciplinary issues or any indication of a troubled family life. I just didn't have any friends and spent my free time in the library. When I asked why I got singled out, she looked awkwardly at her desk and said I could go. Story 14. We had a mentally challenged kid who stood up in the middle of lunch and threw his tray of food against the wall and ran out of the room screaming. The assistant principal walked past my table saying, "I guess he didn't like the soup." Your assistant principal is hilarious. Story 15. When I was in 6th grade, one of my classmates took off his prosthetic leg and tried to hit the teacher with it. I went to school with a kid who had a prosthetic leg, who would constantly pick fights with people and then take it off and try to use it as a weapon. One particular time, this dude just grabbed it, yanked it out of his hands and tossed it over a wall. Dude looked so bummed, hopping around the fence to go get it. I don't think he tried doing it again. Served him right for acting like a bully. Story 16. A kid in my kindergarten class whipped out his once for show and tell. He said, "It hides when he's cold." That's the only sentence he got out before one of the teachers was able to get to him and pull up his pants. The girls in the class asked what it was for, and the teachers didn't know what to answer except for snack break and then back to show and tell. Story 17. In high school, I reached down for a binder that was in my backpack on the floor. I reached down to grab it, and when I positioned myself back upright in my chair, I ended up scooping the teacher's boobs, who was walking down the aisle, with my head. We just kind of looked at each other in fear, and no words came out of either of our mouths. Nobody else saw it, or at least made a point to say that they saw it. I like to think it was just our little uncomfortable secret. Your teacher's boobs were obviously very large. Story 18. I was about 12 when this happened. I'm from Canada, so translate this to whatever grade it is for you. We were in music class and some guy got a boner because he just started having them and have them all the time. Now, the awkward thing is he just starts poking at it, then hitting it hard to make it go away. Most of the people around him noticed and just burst out laughing. Story 19. As a senior in high school government class, my teacher would hit on all the girls in the class. One day, he asked one of the girls if she was spanked for bad behavior as a child. And when she said that she had, he quietly asked her if she liked it while the rest of the class was there. Half the room heard. That teacher is super creepy. I hope someone reported that to the principal. That is very disturbing. Story 20. There were two kids known for playing this joke on substitute teachers. It goes like this. Student A tells the sub to ask Student B how many push-ups his grandpa can do. Student B tells a story while pretending to cry about how his grandpa lost both his arms in the war. Multiple substitutes broke out in tears, crying, and had to leave. That is convoluted and evil, but also magnificent. Story 21. Middle school chemistry class. The ceiling vent fan had not been used since at least the previous spring term. Pigeons had nested in it unbeknownst to the teacher. Fan used during a demonstration. Pandemonium reigned that day. Blood and feathers rained that day. That's metal as frick. Story 22. Kid in my sophomore math class would rub his girlfriend's bare feet for most of the class. Every day. That girl was the happiest person in the entire school. Foot massages are so relaxing. Story 23. This one time in 3rd grade, the boy next to me went under his desk and took his clothes off because he wanted to be invisible. It only works if you aren't looking at him. Story 24. During the lunch break, this guy who was eating a sandwich was on the verge of sneezing. So he finally sneezes, and I see the piece of sandwich flying, I'm not kidding, into the mouth of my classmate who was busy laughing. His confused expression was priceless. Oh no, how gross. Did the kid realize where it came from? Better not to know. Story 25. There was a kid in my school who was kind of problematic. One day during a math test, he grabbed the test papers, went to the corner of the classroom and peed on them. Sorry, teacher, I can't finish the test. There's pee on it. Story 26. Some kid that pulled his hard-on out during a movie to impress us, not his girlfriend. Story 27. I once watched a kid stand on top of his desk, then run around the room crying after the teacher asked him to stop. This was in high school. Makes you wonder why he did it. Drugs? Problems at home? Mental illness? Story 28. A friend of mine was bragging about how he could sleep with any of the girls in the class. My other friend decided to put his boast to the test by asking all girls at once, loudly. The one guy that slept through every class raised his hand. Story 29. My period started. I was also wearing a white dress and sat in front of a guy I had a huge crush on. Go me. Seriously embarrassing. Hopefully he didn't notice anything. Story 30. Class bully pouring some of his own pee on the teacher's head. Teacher shrugged it off because it wasn't a lot and didn't know what it was. Lucky for him, the teacher didn't know what it was. Click on one of the videos on the screen now, or Karen will sue you.